It has been rumoured for years that a Six Flags attraction could come to Orlando. Well, for 8.5 years, it happened. Just not with the attraction many expected. Or even remember. In 1948, Alan Parkinson, a California-based salesman, saw an advertisement in a Canadian newspaper for a sleep aid called Persomnia. Unable to sleep himself and plagued by insomnia, he thought the idea of a sleep aid would be perfect to sell. But he hated the name. He came up with Sleep Ease and created a best-selling product.
When you can't sleep because tension has you all wound up, take Sleep Ease.
In 1959, he decided to sell his now multi-million-dollar company from the product and take a new venture in a very different industry. After a trip to London in 1958 and experiencing Madame Tussauds London Waxworks and the crowds it brought, he decided to borrow the idea and bring it to California, putting all his money from the Sleep Ease sale into the creation of a brand new attraction not far from Disneyland in Anaheim. Just a boysenberry pie throw away from Knott's Berry Farm. The area was chosen as it was becoming the hub of Southern California tourist attractions. Plus, the fact he couldn't find a place with enough parking in Hollywood.
Just a few high-speed miles out of Hollywood is a new building, and there's nothing like it on the face of the earth. Movieland Wax Museum, a shrine to the great stars of the motion picture industry, past and present. It's a tribute to the world-famous performers who have made people everywhere laugh and cry and wonder at the magic of the film capital of the world, Hollywood.
The Movieland Wax Museum opened its doors on May 4th, 1962, after 3 years of work. Costing $1.5 million, the gleaming white building radiated elegance throughout, with its star-studded wax figures draped in costumes from their famous roles. As Hollywood stars turned up for the grand opening itself, Alan Parkinson couldn't believe what he had even created. The waxworks within were created from photographs and made in Hong Kong, Mexico, and Spain, and averaged around $2,500 each, taking a month to make. Their likenesses were hit or miss depending on who sculpted them. Parkinson urged that visitors had to come out and see his new tourist attraction. With a total of 60 wax stars at the opening, everyone who came would be allowed to take a picture with someone they admired. Movieland Wax Museum was incredibly popular right away, with as many as 1.2 million visitors a year coming throughout the 1960s. Much of Hollywood considered it an honor to be featured in the attraction.
People come here to Southern California from all over the world, even the stars themselves, to see this unique shrine and take a loving look back through 1,000 yesterdays at the greatest performers of the screen. Movieland Museum is a majestic tribute to the stars. And to the people who come here, it's an unforgettable experience.
With the addition of each new star, Parkinson would send a gold Rolls Royce to bring the celebrity to the attraction in style and see their recreation in person. He himself had become a staple in the celebrity circles of Hollywood. After the success of Movieland Waxworks, he followed it up with 2 other attractions, the nearby Japanese Village and Deer Park, and the Palace of Living Art. People called him an imaginative man and a constant dreamer, quite fitting for the guy who made Sleep Ease popular. It wouldn't be long until Parkinson was bored with his company, and he moved to Arizona, purchased a ranch and raised horses and bred cattle. In 1969, he sold Movieland and his 2 other attractions to Great Southwest Inc. for $10 million. Great Southwest Inc. would be the parent company of Six Flags. Six Flags have been expanding after opening in Texas, first with a park near Atlanta, but they wanted to operate smaller attractions. Movieland Wax Museum remained mostly the same after the purchase, still popular and expanding its offerings. The museum was often mentioned in the same sentences as Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm. A major tourist addition for those visiting, it was that popular and a staple of the area. While Anaheim was the former capital of tourism for California and had worked perfectly for Movieland Wax Museum, a new location was being touted as the new tourism hotspot. In Florida, Walt Disney World opened in 1971, and just like how opening the original Wax Museum near Disneyland had worked, Six Flags would try to do the same again. In 1973, Six Flags purchased 7 acres of land along Interstate 4 near Orlando for development of an attraction based on the history of motion pictures. Six Flags vice president at the time, Joseph Pravito, announced the plans called for construction of a Movieland Wax Museum and film history of the motion picture exhibit. Six Flags Movieland in Orlando would be set to welcome 150 wax figures of Hollywood's most famous stars. An expanded version of the original attraction with expanded hopes for attendance. Six Flags expected to attract 800 to 900,000 people through the doors each year. The full details on what would become Six Flags' newest attraction were announced at a press conference that really stressed how incredible this new addition would be. It was to be called the Six Flags Stars Hall of Fame Wax Museum. It would cost an estimated $6 million and be full of famous movie sets from over 90 films. Construction would begin in May 1974, with a June 1975 opening planned, and it would provide jobs for 75 to 100 people. The 50,000 square foot building would plan to include 3 themed restaurants, a recreated 1920s movie theater showing classic films, a time tunnel exhibit where it took you back to see the past. It would use special effects to take visitors on a sensory trip through a Western street shootout, experience the fog of a horror movie, or through the streets of Atlanta in scenes from Gone with the Wind. The 3 different restaurants would provide either a waterfront, Eastern Town, or Japanese tea house atmosphere for those looking to eat while they visited. The proposed layout was ambitious. It was announced by Six Flags officials and actor Glenn Ford, and the hype began almost instantly. This would not be the same attraction as in California. This would be one that would transport you into the world of entertainment, movies, and television. You could say the first movie-based attraction in Orlando. By joining Disney World, SeaWorld, and the under-construction Circus World, they stated Six Flags were ready to become a staple of the Orlando community and provide entertainment for its millions of visitors for years to come. Despite fuel shortage woes for the tourism industry, they had decided to go ahead and they expected it to be a hit. Six Flags predicted, or should I say hoped, to attract 1 million guests per year. This was around 1/10 of the average at Disney World at the time. To build even more hype, a preview center for the attraction was set to open in the Florida Center, and Six Flags would soon be coming to Orlando. On May 10th, 1975, the Six Flags Stars Hall of Fame Wax Museum opened quietly to the public. Grand celebrations were to be held in mid-June, as some of the sets were still not yet finished. Those visiting began the trip in an early 1900s theater. They would watch a 7-minute movie on film history before they headed into the time tunnel that took you to the 4 different movie set sections of the attraction. These were the silent and golden era, modern period, TV sections, and Sounds of the Stars. The surprise attraction, which many considered an odd choice over opening a Six Flags over Florida, was said by the company to be a better complement to the already existing theme parks in the area, and that Six Flags over Florida would provide too much competition to their Georgia park. The attraction, though, didn't feature all that it promised when announced, with only 1 self-service restaurant, a small arcade and gift shop, and cut-down theater experiences, due to budget cuts. But would it be enough to entice people in still? Early reviews of the Orlando attraction were not good. Before the grand opening gala, which featured Debbie Reynolds, Glenn Ford, and many more, newspapers reported that the attraction was a disappointment. It was advertised as an experience through the history of film that would take you into film, but it was pretty much just a generic wax museum. The entrance Grand Theater was small and plasticky. The time tunnel was just a tube with Hollywood actor pictures on the wall and some flashing lights. The promised attractions that transported you into the Western world or horror experiences were not there. As for the wax figures, many of the world's biggest stars were missing, with half of them looking nothing like their real-life counterparts. Basically inside was aligned mirrored corridors which showed half-finished sets and a very varied mix of stars. If it was worth the $3.95 to get in was questionable. You couldn't even take pictures with the stars as the movie sets were digitally monitored with alarms going off to stop guests going into them. The only wax figures that you could actually take a picture with was Frankenstein's monster or Spock, and that would cost you an extra $2.50. It was through the mirrors that you could see yourself with the stars in the movies. The press release beforehand had promised a lot, and not really much of it was inside. About a month after the grand opening, most of the sets were finished, and to be fair, many stated they were impressive. The opening, despite the reviews, had been moderately successful, with the average visitor spending an hour and a half within. Attendance did reach projections in opening year, and Six Flags had successfully, mostly, entered the Orlando tourism market. The attraction did promise that more stars would be added, and that they would continue to expand. The opening year was pretty much a success, despite a somewhat mediocre reaction. In the end, during the opening year, over 600,000 people visited, higher than projected, with the small attraction generating $3 million. The second year remained popular, with the new additions this year mostly focusing on sprucing up the exterior of the building, including some impressive star-covered canopies. Year by year, attendance continued to rise, though not as much as hoped for. It benefited from being one of the only few fully indoor attractions in the area. In 1978, the Wax Museum announced it would finally begin building its Plaza of the Stars, featuring 130 famous handprints and footprints from the stars. They were all formed around the 1952 gold Rolls-Royce, one that used to originally shuttle stars to the California attraction. Attendance was up 14%, with 800,000 people visiting, and its future looked quite promising. The Six Flags Stars Hall of Fame Wax Museum, yeah, the name is long, continued with a few new additions, including more waxworks, and a new restaurant called Bogey's in 1980. Their biggest addition, though, would be joining forces with 20th Century Fox in an expansion of the attraction. The screen test competition was a visitor participation show where select people at the attraction could receive an all-expensive paid trip to Hollywood and get to feature in a Fox TV show or movie. The volunteers would have to perform in scenes on stage in front of the audience, and the best performances would be selected twice a year to go to Hollywood. This $1.2 million expansion also included the Fox Gallery, had a new theater lobby showing Fox movies, and had one of the first haunted house attractions in Orlando. Vincent Price's Monster Manor, a walk-through adventure where guests could experience a real horror movie. The maze-like attraction featured many monster waxworks, as well as a handful of custom humans ready to pounce. The last edition of this huge expansion would be Gunfighter's Gulch, a behind-the-scenes look at how stunts in westerns were performed. The experience was finally becoming a fully fledged attraction, exactly as it had promised before it had opened. Sadly, it was too late. All of this came right before its demise. Attendance was about to drop.
The 21st century begins October 1, 1982. Epcot Center, Walt Disney World.
The wax attraction's final downfall would come in the form of Epcot Center, the brand new future-looking theme park at Walt Disney World that would eat up the small attraction's attendance. Guests visiting now had other options to fill their time on their short trips to Orlando, and found very little reason to venture out to the small attraction on an international drive. Despite the exciting new attractions, 1982 would be the worst year for Six Flags in Orlando, and investment came to a halt. For the first time ever, the attraction would lose money. The Fox Screen Test Show was quickly replaced with the Great Rock and Roll Time Machine Show as a cost-cutting measure. This was a show that already existed at other Six Flags properties. A new management team, shared with California, would be brought in to try and turn things around. With an 18% drop in attendance, they needed change quickly, and the new additions didn't help with their higher running cost. For the first time in the Six Flags attraction's history, its future looked uncertain. 1983's attendance dropped a further 25%. In late 1983, Six Flags placed the struggling attraction up for sale. The new management could not fix the issues. It would remain up for sale, open for over a year, before someone would purchase it. Originally, it looked like it would be WFTV Channel 9 as a location for their studio. Textbook publisher Harcourt Brace Jovanovich were on an attraction spending spree in Orlando. They would buy Circus World, SeaWorld, and Cypress Gardens in just a few short years. And they had been linked to the sale of the Wax Museum. The problem was, they had no want to run one. As the sale was officially announced, a spokesman for the Wax Museum said that HBJ would remove the 200 wax figures from the building, lay off the staff, and close the attraction. The museum's building and its office building were 12 acres near the publisher's headquarters, and they wanted to use the site for something else, specifically an admission-free educational exhibition. On September 30th, after 8.5 years, Six Flags Stars Hall of Fame would close forever. The self-proclaimed largest wax museum in the world would be no more. Six Flags had lost faith and money in their wax museum business. They could not turn it around and were out of Orlando, never to return. In 1985, HBJ opened the country's largest bookstore for children in the former Wax Museum next to Interstate 4. Called the Places of Learning, the free attraction sold books, toys, and learning aids for children. They hoped people leaving the theme park would come in to see the wonders of learning and buy a book or two. With a 1-acre map of the United States outside to play on and a giant chess set, they hoped the attraction would offer something completely different for the area. By 1989, HBJ was struggling themselves and sold all their attraction properties to Anheuser-Busch. The Place of Learning complex was included in the $1.1 billion deal. Busch Gardens, though, did not have a use for the site. The former site of the Wax Museum was sold by Busch Gardens to developers in 1990. Over the years since, it has been home to mostly offices. Today, the building still sits very much reminiscent of how it once was, near I-4 by International Drive, and is today still used as offices, with a few little remnants of the past remaining. As for the original Wax Museum in California, after Six Flags sold it, it would continue to operate until 2005 when it was closed and its figures auctioned off as the iconic attraction was no more. There has been talk for decades of a Six Flags park coming to Orlando, and for just 8 years, it happened. Kinda. By the time the attraction had finally got up to what it was promised to be, it was too late, and competition was just too high at the time with the brand new Epcot theme park. Six Flags Small Waxworks was not equipped to stand the test of time in such a busy tourism market. Though, it has to be said that the idea of a wax museum on International Drive was somewhat ahead of its time. In 2015, nearly exactly 30 years after closing, further down the road on International Drive would open Madame Tussauds Orlando, a version of the place that inspired the whole thing in the first place. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Expedition Extinct. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to join the expedition. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram for updates on upcoming episodes, and a special thank you to our Patreons for supporting the channel. We will see you next time.